If your intuition is screaming at you, let it scream because it's telling you something. And I know that there is other ways to do it, and we can shift patterns and make sleep a little easier without avoiding and ignoring that intuition.
Hey, Mama Bear. Welcome to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. Do you dream of bonding with your baby through exclusive breastfeeding, but worry about breastfeeding pain or low milk supply? Maybe you're struggling with breastfeeding and no one seems to have any answers. I'm Jamie, doula, international board certified lactation consultant, and mom of 5, and I have been where you are. After working through painful latches, milk supply worries, and postpartum depression, and supporting countless mothers through their breastfeeding journeys for over 8 years, I'm here to tell you breastfeeding doesn't have to be perfect to be positive. Each week, I'll share breastfeeding tips to help you prevent and overcome unexpected breastfeeding challenges so you can actually enjoy bonding with your baby. If you are ready to shut out the toxic whispers of the world, embrace your God-given intuition, and release your inner fierce mama bear, grab some coffee or your favorite herbal tea and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Breastfeeding with Confidence podcast. Today we are interviewing Taylor McKay from CozyLittleSleepers on Instagram to talk about infant sleep. And if you are wondering how to get your baby to sleep more, you are struggling with sleep like so many of us are, and everything that you're hearing about sleep training doesn't sit right with you, but you don't know what to do next, I think you're going to love today's conversation. Let's get into it. So let's start out and just tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you do this.
So my name is Taylor McKay, and I am a baby-led sleep and well-being specialist. I'm also a birth doula, childbirth educator. That's where I started with first, and then slowly made my way into sleep. And it was my second baby that drove me here, drove me super sleep deprived, looking for answers and looking for another way. I traditionally, and we can get into this, but I traditionally sleep trained my first daughter. And when I got to the point where I felt like I needed to change some sleep patterns and fix some things with my second daughter, I tried to do the same method, and every nerve in my body, every intuition was screaming at me that this was not the right thing to do. She was not taking to it the same way. And I was like, there has to be another way to get sleep. There has to be something that I can do that's not leaving my baby to cry. I hired 2 sleep trainers to work with. The first one basically told me that there was no option for my baby, that this was just, I'm stuck, and she wasn't doing it, and she wasn't doing it right, and she didn't know what else to do. The second one sort of had the same answer and kind of said that like I was stepping in on it and picking her up too often and soothing her too much, and that I needed to take a step back. And every red flag in my body was spiking. And so this is what led me to find this approach and find this certification. And as soon as I dove into it, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I needed. I needed someone to tell me that my baby wasn't broken. I needed someone to tell me that I can listen to my intuition and nurse to sleep and still protect my breastfeeding relationship that I had with my baby. I just needed to be told that like there was another way to approach sleep. And so I fell in love with it. And I was like, I need to get this out, and I need parents to know, because I don't see it talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Anytime you see sleep issues, you see sleep training. And I was like, there's another way.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'll say the first time we met, I heard your story, and at first I was like, oh boy, this lady is one of those sleep trainers. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep listening. I'm just going to keep listening. And then I was like, she gets it. And she's been there where we've all been, where society has told us one thing and all of the experts are repeating that same thing. But all of that goes completely against how our babies were designed, how we were designed. And I love that you talk about intuition, because that's so much of what I work with my moms, is learning how to trust their instincts and their intuition and kind of shut out all those lies. And it's really, really hard. So I just kind of want to dig in a little bit to your philosophy on sleep, and what are maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest mistakes or misconceptions that you see when moms are trying to navigate sleep. Maybe some of the biggest lies that you hear, or just those things that people say and you're kind of like, no, this is not the way.
Yeah, so I think the first one that we really tried to tackle is the fact that night wakings are normal and that night wakings are needed and that night wakings are like our biology talking to us and our baby's biology helping them stay alive and survive. I think we are in a society where we look for this quick fix, where we have these huge expectations, where our lives are so busy, which is why I will never sit back and judge a mom for trying to sleep train, because it's the information that is out there. It's the information when they're Googling at 3 a.m. and they're exhausted. That's what's coming up, is that you need to do these methods. So I don't ever judge a mom for doing that, because we live in a society, and especially in the States, I'm from Canada, so our mat leave is a lot longer, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But work virtually with a lot of moms in the States, and they're returning to work so early, and their baby is still waking up 4 or 5 times a night, and they're in survival mode, and they're like, I can't function at work. So I get why we're in this phase of needing to find solutions and find answers. And unfortunately, this sleep training is what they get promised, is in 3 days everything will be better. But what we need to understand first is what's developmentally appropriate for our babies at what age, and then where are the red flags that are lying. So I think that that's the other thing that is not spoken about, is that there are some issues with sleep that are red flags that we need to address, and that sleep training and letting them cry it out is not addressing these issues.
Right. I completely agree with that. So, and that just, I love hearing that because it overlaps so much with the work that I do. And it's,
Mhm.
we need to find out the why. There's always a reason why. It might be that it's just your baby's developmentally normal stage. It also could be things, and you can speak to this more soon. It could be things like tongue tie. It could be vitamin B deficiencies. There are so many things that can impact sleep that we just, it's kind of like, we go very black or white in our
Mhm.
society on all things. And it's like, no, there's this middle area and there's this gray area and there's reasons for behaviors. And if we want to quote fix, not everything needs to be fixed, but if we want to fix those behaviors, we need to understand what we're working with before we
Mhm.
can even create a plan that's going to work.
Well, what I see often is parents have sleep trained their baby or toddler using the traditional methods, and they're like, it was great, they've done amazing, things were great, but then they come in a few weeks or a month or 2 months, and all of a sudden their sleep is horrible again.
Hmm.
And it's like, why isn't it working? It's not working again. And it's like, well, we might have not addressed the reason for these night wakings first. And we can connect this a lot to breastfeeding. And I'm super passionate about that, because when I look back on my breastfeeding experience with my first daughter, it abruptly ended around 8 or 9 months. Well, when did I sleep train?
Yep.
Around the same time. When was I so fixated on getting 12 hours of sleep at the same time? I wanted her, and the course that I took told me that she needed to sleep from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and to cut out night wakings. And that's the only way I was going to get sleep.
Yeah.
Well, this approach, like, I am not cutting out any night wakings, especially if it's not developmentally appropriate for your baby. Also, are there feeding issues that are contributing to lots of night wakings? And I'm sure you see this all the time, but this is why before we get into making any shift, making any change, we are making sure that none of this is an issue. A lot of what we do is actually during the day that is like assisting us in that night sleep. So making sure that feeding, whether it is bottle feeding or breastfeeding, is working and doing things properly during the day, so that we're not contributing to all of these night wakings overnight. And I will see moms who, they're struggling with breastfeeding, they're struggling with latch, maybe it's a tongue tie, maybe gas, reflux, whatever it is. And then those issues during the day are just trickling over into the nighttime, right? So we need to address and figure out these things before we head into that.
Absolutely. And for the moms that are listening, if this feels like something you're experiencing, like you've been wondering, breastfeeding's not going well, sleep's not going well, could it be connected? Some of the things you might look for is, like you said, if your baby's waking a lot at night, well, it's probably the same thing during the day. You're just very
Mhm.
busy and trying to survive, right? And you notice it more at night, because what happens is if baby's not getting enough milk, they're going to nurse more frequently. Or
Mhm.
if they're doing that kind of, I take a few sucks and then fall asleep and then wake back up 20 minutes later and I'm taking forever to feed. That can really negatively impact sleep, because we're
Mhm.
doing this feeding every hour cycle. And then where does that land us? Sometimes during the day, that's a little more manageable and we notice it more at night. I know there's a lot of nuance to it. What is your advice for either the mom who is afraid of co-sleeping but feels like that's her only option, or for the mom who doesn't want to co-sleep but her baby wants to?
Yeah, so I think we need to sit and look at the mom's mental health and realize and give it acknowledgement and realize that it is okay to not want to co-sleep. It is okay to want to co-sleep. You need to figure out what's working for you and what's not. And so a lot of the times moms will come to me and say, my doctor's telling me I can't bed share, or I can't co-sleep, however you want to word it. But it's the only way I'll get sleep. Well, we can go through and make sure that you're doing it safely. And as long as you're doing it safely and it's working for you, there's no problem. So we're focused on fixing problems that don't exist. If it's working for you and your family, just because it goes against what you've read on social media, that's okay. If there's no problem to fix, if it's working for you. I see that a lot, is like moms will say, well, like, they're 12 months and they're still waking twice a night to nurse. And I'm like, okay, like, they're like, she nurses for 3 minutes and she goes back down. I'm like, great. Like, is that interrupting your sleep? Do you feel like that's impacting your mental health? No, but like, I feel like she should be sleeping through the night. So sometimes it's just a little bit of reassurance. So if a mom is wanting to co-sleep, but the doctor's telling them no, we need to make sure that we're doing it safely, like everything. And we need to make sure that they're in an environment that is protected when we're talking about bed sharing and co-sleeping. And for the mom that doesn't want to do it and wants a little bit more space and wants the baby to sleep on their own, that's also okay. You don't need to have that guilt. For me, I bed shared with my second daughter until about 5 months. And then I started to feel those feelings of like, I want my space. I don't want you in my bed anymore. I want to go to bed and not have to worry about you being right next to me. And so we transitioned to the crib. So we make this transition very, very slowly. And I think this is the difference in this approach than a lot, is that instead of focusing on separation, we actually focus on connection. So we are actually bringing you and your baby closer together for this little bit, making sure that there's tons of connection during the day. So if your baby is in daycare all day long, you get home and you have 2 hours before bedtime, or an hour and a half, because that's very realistic for a lot of working families. That time that you're with your child needs to be so focused on connection, because when you're at work all day, your baby's at daycare, you get home, you do dinner, you do bath, and you throw them into the crib. If they're not wanting to settle in there, that is very normal. They have spent too much time away from you. They want to be close. So we focus on building that connection in that bedtime routine in the evening so that your baby feels safe, because science and research is showing that it's actually connection and safety and the bond between a mom and a baby that actually helps them to sleep better at night. It actually helps them to feel safe when they know that that parent is there, when they know that that parent's going to respond. I'm currently working with a mom who is baby just turned a year, and they're in bed sharing, nursing around the clock, and she's exhausted. She's burnt out. She wants a change, and the change wants to happen. She wants to get the baby into his own room, onto a floor bed. That is a huge way that we use this transition out of bed to a crib, is that we find that going from bed with parents into a crib is very harsh transition, and oftentimes is not going to go very well, because the baby is so used to being so close to you. And it's not a bad thing. Like, you haven't failed because this isn't going to work. But floor beds are an awesome way to make that transition for families that have been bed sharing and want to have a little bit more independence. And we keep you close. We like play in the crib lots before we make the transition. The approach that I take takes multiple weeks. We do a whole month together. It's not a 3-day fix, because we need to make sure that this baby is secure and safe in the connection with you, in your bond, in their sleep space, understanding that mom can leave and return. So we do lots of playing. There's a whole play-based aspect of this too. Lots of playing in the crib, lots of playing peekaboo. Mommy can step out and go get a glass of water and I can come right back. So we're teaching the child that this is an okay place to be, even when mommy steps out for a second, that she'll be right back. So we take a very slow approach to it. It's not a 3-day fix. And this is why I make sure when clients register with me that they are prepared for this. We're picking a month where you're dedicated to this, where you're wanting to make this change, that you're confident in making it. If the mom's not confident in that decision, it's not going to go well. So when you decide that you're no longer wanting to bed share, we make sure that it's the right timing, that you're confident in that decision, that it's something that you want. And then we go ahead and we do it really slowly and really gently for the baby.
I love that. Another question that I have is a lot of how just my personal experience, like I've got 5 babies. Every baby is going to be different. A huge part of making those transitions for me was the support of my husband and like incorporating him in nighttime wakings. It's like, okay, the baby has been fed. We know she's fine. Now she needs to learn connection with you. And when
Mhm.
I'm working with families with weaning and kind of that's usually when this comes up for us is a lot of times either very early in the newborn stage when they're like, I want to co-sleep and I can't because the doctor said so. And so we have to navigate that. Or with a lot of my clients, it's at the weaning stage. So around that 1.5 year mark. And I always feel very challenged when I'm working with a family that the husband is maybe, or the dad, the partner is like I work with military families a lot. So maybe they're deployed, maybe they're TDY, maybe they work nights, or they just are not present for one reason or another. And that's where I kind of end up like, I feel like I'm at my limit. Like, I don't have the skills to support this. What kind of tips do you have for moms who are kind of doing this solo and don't have that support of another person to like help them tap out when it is challenging?
It's very hard because I do find, like, even for myself, my husband is not military. He does work the odd night shift here and there, but the way we've always functioned is that I just take on a lot of the nights. He gets up very early for work. He gets up at 3 a.m., goes to the gym, and then goes to work. He works long days. He's a very involved, very active dad. That's another topic. People get a little fiery when I say I do the nights all by myself, but it's just how we function. It's just how we have worked. So I step in and tackle these things on my own. So when I'm approaching this with a client, I'm almost sort of approaching it that the mom is going to be the one to do this. And yes, it is so beneficial when we can have someone else step in that isn't that one that they're used to. That's a huge tool in the toolbox, but it's not always there. It's not always available.
Exactly.
As you said, there's so many. So we find the ways that work for that baby. We're shifting patterns. So if it's always been nursing back to sleep, if that's all they ever know, we need to shift that behavior. We need to shift that pattern. So we need to implement some other type of soothing. Now, the other thing that we talk about a lot in this is we work with the parents on emotion and what are they comfortable with their kids' emotion. I will never promise a no cry approach. It's no cry it out, but there's going to be tears, because when you shift patterns and you shift routine in babies, they're going to express their emotion about it. Emotion is not a bad thing. Tears are not a bad thing. Our babies and our kids need to move through tears in order to process change, in order to process their emotion, in order to move to the next phase of feeling comfortable. When someone like messes with my routine, I'm also grumpy.
Yeah.
We've just learned to like deal with our emotions and handle it a different way. So I prepare parents that, for a mom who's on her own, if you're trying to cut out that first feed of the night, say, and that's the only way you've ever put your baby back to sleep, and tonight we're not going to do that. We do it in a way that we do like pause and break. So maybe we're nursing for a minute and then off, and we're patting the bum or we're rocking, and we're going to sit through that emotion. They're going to cry because they want the boob, they want it back, or they want that feeling of familiarity. But we support that emotion, and we tell the mom to always tune into that intuition. If that emotion is getting too intense for you, back to what works, back to what makes them feel comfortable. Co-regulation, like calming yourself down so we
Yeah.
can calm our babies down. The whole approach is just very following that mom's intuition, but also understanding that when we do try to shift patterns, there's going to be tears with our baby. The difference here is that we sit there and support it. We don't leave them.
I love that so much because I think I started out kind of like you in a very the way the world said to do it, like by the book kind of approach, following the rules. It didn't work. And then I swung very far to the opposite direction where it's like, oh my God, if my baby cries at all, I'm failing. And I think that's where a lot of moms are, is they're like, well, I don't want to leave my baby crying. And she's like, I was holding her, but she cried for 10 minutes and I'm failing. And it's like, no, you're still showing her that you're there. There's a big difference in your baby crying with you there than
Mhm.
crying alone. I think the difference is many of us have not learned how to handle our emotions. So we feel stressed when they're crying and we're feeling maxed out. So then feelings of guilt kind of layer on top of
Mhm.
that. And so I love to hear that you take that holistic approach. It's not just this rigid step by step, follow this and it's going to work for you. It's very individualized, it's very holistic. You're taking every aspect of the family dynamic into consideration.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this work is actually with the parents, not with the baby, because it's us who have years of our life experiences on us, and we have so much on our plate, and we have so much stress, and we have postpartum depression, and we have birth trauma, and we have all of these things that are on us, and our baby crying can send us into this spiral, and our baby's not doing anything wrong. Our
Yeah.
baby is healthily expressing that emotion, and crying is not bad. Crying is not this thing that always needs to be fixed, and especially move into toddlerhood. Like when Willow has a meltdown, I don't want to shove the binky in her mouth right away. I sit there and I let her have it, because the more that they have these emotions, the quicker they move through them, the more resilience they build. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to let your 5-week-old sit there and scream for hours and you're just going to pat their bum saying it's okay.
Right.
Your intuition's going to kick in and you're going to say, okay, I need to change. This isn't working. The way that my month package works is that we do this intake call. There's a very in-depth intake form. We do all of this stuff and you have daily support for 4 weeks afterwards. However, it's on you. I'm going to give you this information. I'm going to set you up, but I'm going to set you up with so much confidence that you are going to handle this. I'm not there being like, do this, do that, do this, change this, step in here. No, you're the parent. You know your baby. We're going to set what we're going to look for and all that stuff. But if you feel like your baby's crying too much, your baby's crying too much.
Right. I love that because it really hands ownership back to the parents. And that's what I try to do in my work too. And that's why I love like virtual lactation, because it's so much easier to hand ownership to the parents. It's like, you have to do this. I can give you the tools. I can't do it for you.
Yeah.
Like when I'm in person, it's much easier to be like, I can just manhandle this baby for you. Right. It's like
Yeah.
we have them feel it all out. And handing ownership back to the parents is something our society doesn't do. Everywhere you turn in our society, whether it's in pregnancy, in birth, whether it's, and this is not to bash anybody who sends their kids to school at all, so please don't take it that way, but handing our kids over to the school system, like at every turn throughout parenthood, there's somebody in a position of quote authority trying to tell us that we're doing it wrong, that we don't know our babies best. And so when we're dealing with these behind the scenes things in life like breastfeeding and sleep and the very bare basics, it's very easy to think like we don't know what we're doing. We shouldn't be making these calls because everybody else has told us in every other aspect not to trust our instincts and not to take ownership. So handing them that ownership, I think, is such a huge part of what you're doing. It's
Also,
shaping them for motherhood, like beyond sleep. It's shaping
yeah.
them for taking ownership in challenging situations as their child grows.
And the thing is I find with the traditional sleep training is this, and I mean, this is society, is we need a quick fix and we want the answers and we want it one way. And it's like, listen, we can spend a month together, but who's to say in that month your kid doesn't cut 3 teeth, come down with a cold, an ear infection, you start daycare and your husband starts working nights, and like it's life. Like sleep is
Yeah.
not linear. Sleep is never going to be the same all the time. It changes with your child. I know when my oldest started school, like her sleep changed. Well, she was away from me for so long. We've spent 4 years together, and then she goes to JK, and all of a sudden her days she was away from me. That affects sleep. Like it's never going to stay the same. So we need to figure out and find our confidence to face all the other problems that are going to come up. I get a mom who's like, oh, I really don't want to be waking 4 times a night. I really want to cut back into do 2. Okay, that's great. I can help you solve that problem, but I also need to uplift you and give you the confidence, because in a month from now, there's another sleep problem coming up. And you don't need to always be Googling and finding that out. You got to have this baseline of like, I'm the parent. I know how to navigate this with my kid. I know my kid and I know what choices I can make to best help them.
Absolutely. So I don't want to go too deep into too many methods and call anybody out by name, but I'm going to get a little bit controversial because I see so much on the internet about people promoting the idea that your baby can and should be sleeping 12 hours by 12 weeks. And when I see that, I like want to throw my phone across the room. And I see that these creators promoting this get so many moms in the comments being like, yes, I want this solution. Yes, I want this solution. And it breaks my heart because I have seen these moms come to me in the aftermath of that and how it has impacted feeding. So what's kind of your hot take, like your 5-second hot take on those kind of programs?
It's going against everything that we should be guiding our children in. And 12 hours by 12 weeks is insane to me. I flip on the opposite side that if I have a newborn baby or a mom come to me with a newborn baby that is sleeping 12 hours, I'm almost looking at why.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm like, are you sure that's how long? Like, are we
Like, I'm
jaundiced?
like,
What's going on?
what are we doing? And I flip the opposite way. It's not like a pat on the back or a gold medal. That's not normal. Like
Yeah.
and if it is that, and you've used a traditional sleep training method, and maybe this is controversial, but like you're going to pay for it in some other aspect with your baby.
Yeah. We haven't gotten too into this, but there's a lot of controversy around, the reasons we don't cry it out or do cry it out. And, you hear the age old line like, oh, my parents let me cry it out and I'm fine. And it always kind of, whenever I hear that line for anything, I'm kind of like, but are you? Like, we have some of the highest mental health issues in history right now. And there's a lot of factors for that. I'm not going to blame it on one thing. That is obviously extremely layered.
Mhm.
But if the foundation that we have built is wiring babies' brains for separation instead of attachment when they are at a stage of development. Like anybody who understands basic psychology 101 should understand this, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like so often we get this is going into a whole different topic, but I feel like we get very focused on the mom's mental health that we allow the baby's mental health to suffer. And that, like you said, we will pay for that later. And then that affects mom's mental health
And
still.
I am a huge advocate for mom's mental health, but we can do this in a way that protects them both.
Yes.
We can do this in a way that, when a mom is feeling overwhelmed, sleep deprived, like she can't do anything right, like she doesn't know how to connect with her baby, she doesn't know how to get out of bed in the morning because she is so sleep deprived. We need to lift that mom up. We need
Yes.
to give her strategies and solutions for sleep that make her feel like I'm in control. I can do this. I can navigate this with my baby. And
While still building that
while
bond.
still keeping connection at the forefront, while still keeping attachment as a priority. What I get the pushback on is, well, why does cry it out work then? Why do we see results in 3 days? And the reason is because our babies have a safety system within them where their nervous system can only be pushed too far. When it hits the max, they shut down. And that is a survival mechanism. They do that because if they continue at the level that they are at, they will physically and mentally exert themselves. So they get to a point and they shut down.
The first time I kind of realized all of this and realized cry it out was not the way for us is I read a study that talked about your baby's cortisol levels get so high when they're crying. And then when they stop crying and they're in that separation state, their cortisol levels stay the same and can still be rising, but they're not crying. So we're not seeing the outward symptomology of it, but it's still happening on the inside. And if anybody knows anything about cortisol, it's the stress hormone and what that does to the brain. It has like very severe impacts on the brain for your cortisol to stay at an elevated level as the baseline. And that was the moment that I was kind of like, oh, just because they stopped crying doesn't mean they self-soothed. And I can even equate that just to myself. Like if I'm like upset with my husband or something, and I like, turn away and like cry myself to sleep, like I'm still mad at him. Just because I'm not
Mhm.
screaming in his face doesn't mean that I'm not still like upset. So why would a baby who hasn't even like felt emotion before know any
Yeah.
different?
And the difference is then you hear the parents say, oh my God, we're sleeping so much better. Like night 3, everything clicked. We're sleeping so much better. Well, your baby is still waking. Your baby is still waking. They're just not signaling for you anymore. So yes, you're sleeping better. Of course you are. I don't doubt that. And I experienced this with my first. Okay. I was that mom in the moms group being like, she's this old, she slept 12 hours, like it's so much possible, it changed her life, it helped my mental health. All of that was so true. She
Yeah.
slept amazing. But one, to what expense? And two, was she still waking up? For sure she was. I just didn't know because she wasn't crying out for me. Because
Right.
if she cried out for me, I was going to leave her there.
Yep.
Let her
Nope.
cry.
You are preaching to the choir. I just hope that any moms listening to this know that if you have tried Cry It Out in the past, we are not judging. We completely understand that need for a solution, but there are going to be so many voices out there telling you things that are not going to make this better and are going to set you up for more problems, even if it seems like a solution at first. Just to wrap it up, what is the one thing that a mom can do right now if she is like at her wit's end? What would you say she could do right now? Obviously, there's no quick fixes, but like, what is the one shift she could make at this moment? And then how can she find you and get real solutions?
I want that mom who's exhausted and at her wit's end. I want her to take a step back and look at the whole picture and realize that where in their life are they super overwhelmed? Where are they lacking? Are they lacking support? Are they lacking self-care? Are they lacking the ability to regulate their own emotions to help their child? Are they lacking the education and understanding what's developmentally appropriate? Take a step and realize that what's happening with your baby's sleep likely is not your fault. And I want them to tune into that. And I think it starts with us. It starts with us getting the help that we need to battle whatever is going on in our brain. And then I want you to dive in and learn a little bit about what is developmentally appropriate for your baby, because a lot of the times I'm getting these moms come to me and I'm thinking, there's no problem. Like, like if your baby's waking twice a night and they're going back like down, that's okay. But if there's patterns and shifts that need to happen and things feel overwhelming and you don't know the next step, something as big as like transitioning from bed sharing to a crib, or weaning out a night feed if it is developmentally and nutritionally appropriate to do so. You can find me on Instagram at CozyLittleSleepers, and very happy to chat in there and see if this approach is right for you. If you are trying other things and your intuition is screaming at you, let it scream, because it's telling you something. And I want you to know that there is other ways to do it, and we can shift patterns and make sleep a little easier without avoiding and ignoring that intuition.
Yeah. And do you have a workshop or something that you host for moms?
Yeah, so right now we are doing a 5-week sleep circle, and it is twice a month. We come together. I do a little teaching at the beginning, and then it's based on Q&A. So it's giving moms a chance to get access to sleep help for a lower cost option than diving in for a month package. It starts this week, and then we'll go for 5 weeks, and then we'll run into a summer program. So for sure, that's a great option to also just find community and find other moms that are also sleep deprived and dealing with everything else. So yeah, we can find that over on Instagram.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you have shed so much light on what's normal, what's not, and just I'm so glad there's resources like you out here that can say like, yes, I've been there, I felt that, and now this is why I'm doing it differently, and I can help you do it differently too.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's a topic that needs to be spoke a lot more, and I'm happy to be a voice in this and be on these moms' sides that need a little bit more sleep.
And that's what every mom needs, is somebody in their corner, just somebody in their corner that's answering to them, not to a doctor or a corporate entity, that's answering to them.
Yeah, I could not agree more.
All right, Mama Bear, that is a wrap for today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident or a little more prepared for breastfeeding, can I ask you a quick favor? Go ahead and leave me a review. It helps other moms find this podcast and join us in this amazing community of fierce and confident Mama Bears. And hey, if you know a friend who could use some encouragement or real talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and all things motherhood, share this episode with her. You've got this, Mama Bear. Trust your instincts, stay fierce, and I'll catch you in the next episode.